Welcome to this CSIAC webinar. We are CSIAC, which along with DSIAC and HDIAC comprise the DoD-IACs, operating under the Defense Technical Information Center within the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense. Our mission is to facilitate interagency collaboration, disseminate scientific and technical information, and reduce redundancy amongst those who support the U.S. government. To achieve this, we offer several free services and contract vehicles, including monthly webinars. Our webinars are hosted by subject matter experts on emerging research and technology topics. Technical inquiries. Submit a question and we will spend approximately 4 hours digging into an answer for you, enough to give you a jump start on your research or project, all at no cost to you. Technical publications. Peer-reviewed reports covering critical technology areas, with focus areas including cybersecurity, software data analysis, and modeling and simulation, plus support from our sister IACs. We help navigate the vast landscape of scientific and technical information to give you a research boost. Visit our website to learn more.
Good day, everyone. Thank you for joining this webinar presentation. My name is Philip Payne. I am the technical lead for the Cybersecurity and Information Systems Information Analysis Center, or CSIAC. Before we get started today, I'd like to note a couple of administrative items. First, if you are dialed in by phone and would like a copy of the slides, they were posted to the CSIAC webinar announcement. You could go to csiac.dtic.mil/webinars and find today's webinar. When you click in it, on the bottom of the announcement, it'll say download presentation. I'll also put a link to the slides in the chat. Secondly, all participants are muted, but feel free to chat using the attendee chat window on the lower right-hand side of your screen. I will be monitoring that chat. However, if you'd like to pose a question for the Q&A session at the end, please click the 3 dots labeled More/Panel Options to bring the Q&A window up as part of your layout. At the end of the presentation, I will go over the Q&A. For the benefit of those on the phone, I'll read the questions out loud to the presenter. If you have any technical issues during the presentation, please have no fear. The full presentation will be available online within a day or two. Please check back to the CSI website once the webinar is posted. The Go To Webinar button will take you to the YouTube link at the bottom of the webinar announcement. With that said, I'd like to introduce today's presenter. Shadi Salaby is a subject matter expert at CompTIA and an adjunct professor at Deakin University Center for Cybersecurity Research and Innovation. Prior to this role, he worked in one of the big 4 banks in Australia's financial sector as a cybersecurity expert and on the front line of one of the biggest and most successful cybersecurity organizations in their 5-star Incident Response and Security Operations Center team. He acquired various cybersecurity industry certificates from ISC Squared, Microsoft, Cisco, HP, and CompTIA. Mr. Salaby graduated from the Center of International Sciences Technique in Business, Computer, and Programming and continued his MBA Magister in Business Administration at Sorbonne. With that said, please take it away.
Thank you, and thanks for having me. Just let me share my slide here. Hope everyone can see that. Thanks for having me today. It's an honor and privilege to be here with you, and thanks for everyone for joining for their time. There are small amendments on the introduction, but I won't use all that precious time here to fix that because we have so much ground to cover today, and I want to take every minute on that. So let's dig in without any further introductions. So with satellites playing an increasingly critical role in global communication, navigation, and defense, making them prime targets for sophisticated cyber attacks. While our focus today is on low Earth orbit, it is important to acknowledge medium Earth orbit and geostationary Earth orbit and briefly highlight the key differences between these orbital regimes. We'll be going into the common satellites architecture, cyber threats and satellites and ground vulnerabilities, case studies, strategies, frameworks, proof of concept. So you see we have a lot to cover, and I hope I can spend the right appropriate time on each subject because it is really important. space security is becoming a very critical subject, and as you will see, the importance of space and what's happening in this domain, it is a little bit alarming, and we have to start.
Seems like we lost the presenter. Give us 1 second to bring him back in. All right, we got you back now. Please
Okay.
continue.
Perfect. So with the CubeSats, we have one unit which is 10 by 10 by 10, or 3 units, which is the common standard of the size of satellites, which is 10 by 10 by 34, which is, if you want to imagine a loaf of bread, a big one, that is your satellite. And now just to add a little bit more, this is a 1U CubeSat with these small dimensions. So you see the size of these satellites, how small, and they're just flying in low Earth orbit. Now, if I want to send this to space, I have to add proper shielding with aluminium. I will have a proper solar panel that will power this satellite, and will have a UL approved battery instead of relying on this 9-volt battery, for example. And what we'll see here, this is the SOC, which is system on chip, which include everything we need with the hardware and software. So now this SOC is for telemetry data that will give us altitude, temperature, velocity, but I can include a camera and start filming as well. There were a few events that a CubeSat like that was launched by hand while walks in space at the International Space Station, but that's not the standard way. SpaceX is one of the biggest delivery method for CubeSats these days. And since we are in August, NASA has an initiative that if you apply and you get accepted with your CubeSat, they will provide you a free launch, zero expense. You don't pay anything to space. Just wanted to introduce a little bit the CubeSat, about the dimension and the qualities, and we'll be going through that a little bit further as well. It's all in the attitude, and especially in space. When it comes to space, attitude is prime, because we need to understand the satellite posture, where it is exactly at every and any given time. Now I included the units, the sizes of the CubeSats from 1 to 12, but I've seen now already advertised the 16U and the 32U dimensions with that. And that enable everyone technically to start introduce to space and democratize space for everyone, because you can buy things off the shelf now with the pre-standard dimensions. I included as well the Thomas Jefferson CubeSat that's already orbiting. A high school launched a CubeSat in orbit. Now we mentioned the low Earth orbit, the medium Earth orbit, and the geostationary. What does that mean? Anything orbiting between 200 to 2,000 kilometers, which is 99 to 1,042 miles, is in the low Earth orbit. A medium Earth orbit, anything above 2,000 and 20,000 kilometers, and geostationary 35,000 and more. So just to put things into perspective, what does that mean? An orbit is the curved trajectory that an object in space, such as a satellite, in this case an artificial satellite, follow around a large body due to gravitational forces. In the vacuum of space, there is no air resistance. A satellite can maintain its motion around Earth with minimal external intervention. This sustained orbital motion results from a delicate balance between Earth gravitational pull and the satellite tangential velocity. So you can see it's a very delicate issue when we have satellites in orbit, and one of the most critical part is when we launch these satellites to stay in orbit and not go above the curve and the orbit and burn itself. So with, or as a cybersecurity professional, why do I need to know that? Small satellites operating at lower altitude complete an orbit around Earth approximately every 60 to 90 minutes. In contrast to satellites in medium Earth orbit, they take between 8 to 15 hours, and geostationary Earth orbit satellites complete a full orbit in 24 hours. As orbital altitude increases, a satellite's orbital velocity decreases, meaning the higher a satellite orbit, the slower it moves. Geostationary satellites are positioned in equatorial orbits, allowing them to remain fixed over a single point on the Earth's surface. This unique characteristic is crucial as it provides constant, uninterrupted communication with ground stations. By comparison, the small sats with the rapid 90 minutes orbits have much shorter visibility periods to any given ground station, typically just a few minutes, between 5 to 8 minutes every 90 minutes per pass. The pass is when the ground station is observing its satellite, and limiting the communication windows significantly. Now we'll see in the architecture designs how we can bypass these limitations and what we can do to do these things. Now with everything getting common, getting popular, AWS and Microsoft Azure now provides a ground station as a service, enabling communication with LEO satellites. LEO will initially host the majority of space-based computing systems. This concentration makes them a prime target for adversaries, underscoring the need for strong cybersecurity measures and effective control mechanisms. The importance of cybersecurity control in space, such as robust encryption protocols, secure communication channels, regular system updates, patching, and comprehensive threat monitoring is vital to effective risk mitigation. If you can observe in the image below, the uptick in low Earth orbit launches in 2020, and it's getting higher and higher every year. So this domain or this space is getting very condensed. Last time I checked, there was like about 15,000 satellite orbiting, about 11 to 12,000 active. The others are inactive but still in orbit. About 500 they are in geostationary orbits, and a little bit more in medium Earth orbit, and the rest is all in low Earth orbit. Now, 60% of these satellites are Starlink, and Starlink only have about 7,000 satellites. Their aim is to reach 42 to 45,000 satellites. Another Chinese company, Guwong, I hope I'm spelling it right, already projecting to launch 13,000 satellites that provide the similar services to Starlink. So we'll see how much crowded this domain is becoming with our orbits. Navigation cyberspace challenges. Now, when it comes to cyber attacks within space, there is always a motive, intention, and opportunity. I just simplified it as much and make it as much clear, including the CIA as well here, as the core cybersecurity pillar to understand the risk of satellites. The cyber risk analysis regarding satellite system is based on the intention and motivation of threat actors and determination of the impact and probability of success, undermining the satellite integrity and its availability. And we'll see most of the attacks and case scenarios target the availability, like what happened with Landsat 7 and Terra IM-1 as well. The nature of satellites missions plays a key role in determining the most effective cyber attack vectors and identifying the subsystems most vulnerable to exploitation. These missions may involve functions such as remote sensing or signal transmissions, as we will see now. Opportunistic attacks on satellites are likely the only scenario where motivation is not the primary driving factor. In most cyber campaigns, however, the underlying intent plays a critical role in shaping both the strategy and the resources allocated for such attacks. Targeting methodology like this one and the intent directly influence the choice of exploitation techniques used by adversaries. Now, we mentioned the motivation, intention, and opportunity, and that depend on the satellite mission. And I divided them in two basic ones, sensing and emitting, where sensing satellites refer to Earth observation satellites, which are specialized satellites designed to collect data regarding the Earth's surface and atmosphere. Have very different intention and motivation from a threat actor perspective versus the emitting satellites, where emitting satellite systems are designed to transmit signals, data, and broadcast either back to Earth or to other satellites. Emission can be employed in both overt and covert operations. A common overt example is signal jamming or signal blocking, in cybersecurity terminologies, DDoS attacks, which can disrupt other satellite sensors or even enable the hijacking of communication channels. And we'll see that in the architecture more as well. Covert operations may involve advanced techniques such as signal spoofing, in which a satellite mimics legitimate signals to deceive receivers in other satellites or ground stations. This can lead to the redirection of navigation systems, the interception of data, or even the manipulation of the satellite behavior itself, like what happened with ROSAT. These tactics are commonly associated with electronic and cyber warfare. So with ROSAT, it is a German-American satellite that was launched to observe the atmospheric of Earth and have X-ray sensors. It was targeted by Russian adversaries. The first time they did some manipulation, and the second time they pointed towards the sun and burned itself. And the attack vector was unfortunately an FTP server, a compromised FTP servers that send these commands there. So these are real events that happens that we need to mitigate and establish a defense in-depth strategy and not just a few controls that we have in our current situations now. Now I'll be spending some time on this slide. This is just a simple point-to-point architecture. A basic space system typically consists of a ground station, as you can see, communicating to a satellite. Let's say this is a CubeSat in this instance. At the ground station, a software-defined radio, SDR, you'll hear these words a lot, which is responsible for receiving incoming signals. It decrypts the communication stream and passes the data to the flight control computer, which runs the software that monitors and controls the satellite operations, including flight status and trajectory. Now, if you look at the satellite part, it's divided between the bus, which is the flight control operator, and the payload, which is the mission. Now, in small CubeSats, there are subsystems on one board, but in other bigger system or bigger satellites, they are divided and they have different systems. The bus is where like the flying or the orbiting of the satellite is more, and it is centered around the command and data handling system. This system is the entry point. This is the attack vector of your satellite when it is operational. So this is a critical vulnerability in your designs. When you have a command and data handling system, you have to have very proper layered security there. In the command and data handling, we have the OBC, onboard controllers, which hold the software. Operating systems used in satellites are called RTOS or RTOS, real-time operating system. This operating system main objective is to do things real time. All the processes must be real time because it's very critical to the satellite. And it has a remote server embedded that accept commands and send commands there. So that's why it is very vulnerable. The payload section is the sensing, the emitting. There's a camera, there's a sensor observing Earth, depend on the mission of the satellite. Now, we mentioned previously where in LEO satellites we have a 90-minute and we have 5 to 8 minutes time every time the passing is to communicate with our satellites. Now, how can we bypass this challenge? Is we implement and install ground station at strategic points on Earth to continuously see and observe our satellite. Or we can have a mesh constellation of satellites that communicate with one another and always continuously communicate with a ground station. Or we have another architect, which is a multi-orbital mesh, where I have a constellation of satellites in low Earth orbit communicating to a geostationary satellite that is always communicating to Earth. Because geostationary is orbiting 24 hours, so it is a fixed we see it as a fixed satellite communicating to one ground station. Or we can implement a variety of these architecture to bypass these challenges. And that's why they have Asia and AWS are jumping into these services to make it feasible for other people that have CubeSats to continuously have access to their satellite. Now, to make things more complicated for us in space, imagine now the bus platform has a classification of sensitive data and the payload has security. So this is different encryption, different segregation, different teams have access to certain things, which make our life in security very complex to deal with these challenges as well for us. So you can see how small things can become very complicated and challenging in space. You have to understand the passing and how much time and how much data you can uplink to your satellite and patch things, instead of having a server room, a server there, and every Saturday at certain time you can patch this server and restart it. You don't need to worry about it. Here there's more complexity and more challenges added to what you're doing. Now, if an attacker gain access to one or more satellites, that could potentially reconfigure them to accept commands not only from their legitimate ground station, but from a rogue one under their command. By doing so, that will compromise the integrity. We're always going to the CIA just to explain what are we missing on with these attacks and these challenges. With the communication link and would assume unauthorized controls. Both ground stations and satellites rely heavily on SDR in CubeSats. It is an SDR, and other bigger satellites, it will be a communication module that handle the antennas and all the communication on the satellite. And as I said, this is the entry point for your satellites, and any adversary will have to compromise your signals and move forward when it is operational. I have included some case scenarios to show you that not only when a satellite is in operation and orbiting, it is a target of attacks. Even when it is being designed and deployed, there are still risks on that. So moving forward now, as we said, the biggest weak link is that communication on satellites. Ground to space communication by nature are practically vulnerable due to their reliance on wireless transmissions. Unlike wired network, these signals propagate through open air, making them inherently susceptible to interception. Even if encrypted, the sheer volume and frequency of transmission can offer attackers enough data to analyze patterns and attempt to break your encryption through traffic analysis or cryptographic attacks. Weak encryption practices compromise the confidentiality of satellite communications, fostering a false sense of security among operators. And we'll see that in the proof of concept. This illusion can persist until a breach exposes the harsh reality that the so-called secure encryption was in fact inadequate. If you go back to World War II, one of the things that broke Sigma is that Heil Hitler, they understood that every encrypted message start by this sentence, and they can decrypt certain words, and they start decrypting the Enigma and make it very easy. So even if things are encrypted, it doesn't mean that it is secure. We go back to the defense in depth, and we'll understand that when we go to the Starlink case, and we'll see how it was compromised, even they were doing all the right thing as well. So mitigations and controls. So we've been talking a lot about problems and issues with space. So now let's talk about some mitigations and controls and how we can fix them. Modern satellites typically incorporate numerous safeguards and controls with a strong emphasis on redundancy and a degree of resilience integrated into the architectural design. Unfortunately, however, CubeSats, these small sats that we've seen, and due to their relatively low cost construction, especially commercial applications, are particularly susceptible to cyber attacks. To enhance the security posture of satellites, the adaptation of advanced encryption techniques such as quantum encryption presents a promising layer of defense. However, encryption alone is not enough, as demonstrated by the SpaceX case, which we will see, and a comprehensive defense in depth, we go back to the same strategy, is very essential. Now, I selected key controls or mitigations. From my perspective, they are the most essential ones, but by far there's a lot of controls that you can include here. but it's a very good list. Deployment of secure gateways enhanced by intrusion prevention system, IPS. This is becoming popular now as well, to monitor and block and prevent malicious activities when happening. The use of field programmable gate arrays to monitor systems and manage critical logical operations in real time. Watchdog scripts and timers that will be triggered to correct actions and even recover navigation if there's any errors. That is a life-saving to satellites. Gold image, I'm sure all used or heard of this terminology that we use to an operating system when there's no way to recover. We just reset everything from a gold image. And there's, for example, rollback access, RBAC, multi-factor authentication, a lot of things everyone might have heard of. And one of the most important ones I see here is the command authentication code, which authenticate the hash to see the integrity of that command. If I'm sending a rogue command and it's not an original command, the hash doesn't match, it will ignore it. So it is a very good as well layered in that strategy to implement. But by far, there's, as I said, there's a lot. Now, these cybersecurity controls are especially vital to protecting small satellites against one of the most serious threats, unauthorized deorbiting. Low Earth orbit satellites are typically designed with an end-of-life protocol that mandates deorbiting after a specific operational lifespan. Usually to mitigate space debris, it is one of the biggest issues as well. For example, Starlink satellites are designed and engineered to deorbit and burn in Earth's atmosphere approximately 5 years after deployment. A cyber threat actor could exploit this system by manipulating a satellite configuration to either falsely indicate that deorbiting conditions have already been met, or prematurely trigger deorbiting by altering the threshold parameter and deorbit the satellite for you and destroy it. And these things, we've seen it happening, or attempts of that happening by many adversaries against satellites. Now, one of the most important frameworks or matrices here, which is the Space Attack Research and Tactic Analysis, SPARTA, is considered the MITRE attack framework for space security. MITRE is very famous within the cybersecurity operations to understand tactic, technique, and procedures and attribute to threat actors. And SPARTA is the same for space. SPARTA is intended to provide unclassified information to space professionals about how spacecraft may be compromised via cyber means. The matrix define and categorized commonly identified activities, but that contribute to spacecraft compromises. If you go to SPARTA as well, you'll find a defense in depth link that explain everything there, and it's segregate the space segment, the user segment, the ground station segment, and layer all these defenses in all that. And they have as well threat modeling that you can see and you can use. Now, the good thing, if you want after this presentation, go there, and in execution, there's the fourth towards the end side channel attack. When we go through the SpaceX, go there and see how it works. You can find it and what can you mitigate, because the good thing about this matrix is they mapped that to NIST SP853 controls and mapped it to MITRE Defend controls and to the ISO 27001. So you have all these mitigation and controls already embedded. And as we'll see later in the digital twin, now we have this sandboxing environment that we can replicate and simulate space and space attack. you can get your blue team defenders and offender red team and simulate attacks based on what you can find here into that digital sandbox and take advantage of that. Very helpful, very useful. That's why I included, and it's good for all to go and just do that exercise when we finish if you want. Now we're going to the malware of an advanced threat actors. And I'm presenting here too, but there's heaps of incidents. One of them is like in Kennedy Station, there's a Trojan that jumped to the International Space Station because they were using a Windows operating system and it was compromised. And it was almost a disaster to happen. There's a lot of incidents. I just selected few that are different from what I've been explaining in operational satellites. For example, the Serpent Chaser in 2020, they attacked a European space company that was working on a very, very secretive space satellite project. And this is highlight the intensity when a threat actor is persistent on getting the blueprint, and they did, unfortunately. In this one, they didn't name the company publicly, but if you go and research, there's a few of them, so you'll figure out which one. The attribution, unofficial attribution, was to the Russian APT-28, which I think from memory, this is Fancy Bear, if you know them by different names. The method was spear phishing. They convinced some very privileged users on this company to click on certain links, and they moved laterally to the file server and retrieved the blueprint of the satellites, unfortunately. Mitigation, cyber awareness, least privilege principle to be applied, having a proper web and email security gateways that will sandbox these URL and attachments, patching. There's a lot of small controls that you can apply. It won't totally prevent attacks, but it will make it very, very harder for your adversaries to penetrate your environment. Another example for a malware, which is the malware 4 STL. And this has happened recently in 2023, 2024. It is a malware operating by leveraging compromised mobile devices, particularly Android tablets used by Ukrainian military personnel, to gather sensitive data about Starlink satellite terminals that was giving a coordination. And by that, the adversary understood what coordinates they're getting, and they can target these coordinates as well. The malware collected data available via API functions on the mobile device, including information about the configuration and everything in the metadata that Starlink was presenting. As well, attribution was APT-44, Russian threat actor, very capable in these attacks. The method, spear phishing, and mostly a compromised chain, supply chain, where they delivered compromised Android tablets, as well as spear phishing, social media, targeted these personnel to make them click and download these malwares. The mitigation strategy is to have an ADR endpoint detection and recovery, proper agent installed that will detect and eliminate these activities. Software updates, always patching is a very helpful thing to do, and device management, what you cannot control, what you cannot see, you cannot protect. So having simple as well, you can see controls, security controls in place will avoid these attacks from happening, or make it very, very harder for your adversaries to make these attacks successful. Now we'll go to the SpaceX Starlink example, which we can use in the Sparta, but you can use any example there. In 2022, in Black Hat Security Conference, a Belgian security researcher demonstrated successfully and how feasible was it to create a very, very low-cost mode chip. It costed him $25 to fabricate, to execute a voltage injection attack on SpaceX Starlink user terminal. bypassing Starlink's security measures and gaining unauthorized access to its systems. This is considered, as I mentioned before, an active side channel attack. And you can go to, it was the last one in Sparta, and look in the active or side channel attack, and you can see how a voltage injection attack could be prevented. And just to mention, Starlink is one of the most secure satellites observing. They have zero trust network, two-factor authentication, proper encryption protocols, AES 256. And this is on the Starlink, on the Star Shield. It's very, very secure. They use the NSA Type 1 encryption and all that. So including and following all the right measures in security, there was a vulnerability in the hardware. And Starlink could not fix this problem by just updating the software. They have to replace the hardware with a new one that won't be compromised. So technically what they did here is they fault inject that on the terminal, and the terminal went hiatus and gave you privileged root access to the terminal. So, and it couldn't be fixed by just a software update. They have to change the hardware architect. And as well, we go to defense in depth and what that strategy can help when it comes especially to a critical infrastructure like satellites. Now we come to the proof of concepts, which will be small videos that will be playing. And starting with the digital twin sandbox, I wanted to introduce that. It is one of the most groundbreaking things to use in cybersecurity. In Hack the Sat, they used some of these sandboxing and digital twin. The one we're using here is from Unreal Engine. And you can see where I live and part of the world. There's Perth and Brisbane ground stations included. And this is a 3U satellite. And these ground stations will be communicating, and you can see now Perth is true. So the connection is through ground station from Perth, not from Brisbane. That will change. And this is, we go to the ground stations and the communication with satellites and how to implement them and which connection will take place. So I'm just sending very basic command, 5 commands to the satellite, and you can see on the right screen the transmission of the network, the noise, all the data that you need to see in a very real environment. So the simulation here is really, really getting better every time the technology is delivering. Here you can have your blue team and red team simulating attack and implementing it on your satellites without the heavy cost of things going wrong and destroying your satellites by these examples. And here I will show you as well the back end, how simple and easy it is to simulate something like that and inject an attack. For example, now I will show you where I can, for example, have a phishing email into the Brisbane ground station and send the wrong coordinates to the satellite, and the orbital cause really serious damage. I'm sorry about the jittery here, because when recording on my laptop and doing the Unreal Engine, my laptop didn't like that so much. So here you can see just the diagrams, how you can build them, and this is the first ground station. Next to it is Brisbane. I know Brisbane will be taking command to send out links, so I can inject the attack here, the phishing, and simulate an attack just simply by embedding that in diagram. Very handy tool to use, digital twin in the space now, and especially if you don't have the budget for big teams, this can simulate and help a lot as well. And it's been tested and provided really good results on occasions like that. Now, the second proof of concept, and this have to come with a disclaimer. It is a research and educational purposes, and I intentionally didn't include all the hack, just part of it, because my intention is not to teach hacking. but to prove the concept when we spoke about encryption, and a lot of operators think that they are doing fine. These things are very, very well known, documented, and talk about, but unfortunately, there's no real solutions in the arena. Now, this is a Dragon OS operating system. If anyone heard about Kali Linux, Kali is the operating system for red teaming penetration testing. Dragon OS is the same for security, space security, to test anything there. It works very well with SDRs. I will show you in a while an SDR and what tools I used. This operating system comes packaged with a lot of tools, a lot of commands that you need to use to test and test your satellites, signals, so you don't need to download anything. Most of the things are downloaded here. Now, in this exercise, we're extracting data. So I'm using the GR. The GR have almost many common architecture of satellites that I can extract data from them. And this is the D4. This is what I emitted from the hack. When you plug your RTL SDR USB, you have to introduce it to your package, so it will see it as device number 4 in this example. And now I'm just saving what I'm extracting on the desktop to make it easier for us to see and observe, but you can save it any place you want when you start extracting. Now, extracting will take a lot of time, depends where you are on Earth and where these satellites that you're extracting data will be orbiting. So you have to do some OSINT and understand when they will be passing and start your extraction, not to waste too much time. I left this one, for example, for 4 or 5 hours to extract some data for them to be passing. So now you can see the RTL SDR device and the extraction start happening, leaving that for 5 hours to extract as much as possible. And you can see as well the signal is not that great from what I'm getting, but I'm getting a lot of data. Now I extracted the data in its raw format. I want to pass the data in from that frames or segments that I can understand, or we can understand if that's a voice, if that's a message, what can we do with that. And this is just drawing a Python 3 to pass it. And I will save that file as well on the desktop. So we'll have the 2 files, the raw data and the passed data that we can do there. So now just writing them on the desktop, that's what's taking some time there. But as I said, you can save them wherever you like and extract them the way you like as well. So I'm calling this one, it will be passed or set passed. And when we do that, then we can get that data, and you'll see what will happen with the splash train. Will not be listening, will not be doing anything like that. Everything will be deleted. But this is just to showcase and prove very well-known hacks are on the internet and everywhere. And I will show you the devices I used, the tools I used. $200-300 cost will give you that. Now I'm going to the stats Voc, which is the voice. It's another Python script that will splash now and make us listen. We are able to hear if there's any recording. So you see these red dots, you click on the first one and the last one and to play what you can intercept it. So imagine something that basic and simple with primitive tools, what other adversaries are capable of and are doing. And hence, security should be a prime focus on our priority list in space, which is not as we speak. There's a very promising project, DARPA, Blackjack, where they are working on a very, very secure cube satellites. They already tested quantum encryption there. They are using crystal dilithium, which is a very promising technology, and we're seeing a lot of good signs with these technologies, and I hope that will continue. So now we have this here, and maybe I'll stop sharing so you can see me better, or let's do that, because I want to show you the simple tools that I used. So this is the RTL SDR, which is just do the demolation, which is receiving data. If anyone is old as me, if you remember the TV dongles that we got and we plug into our desktop, and now we have TV. This is the same chipset with a few configuration. That's why it is very cheap. $30–40 you can get this one. Plug it to your computer, introduce it, and plug it to this antenna. You can see at the back end here. This is an L-band flat hat antenna. $200 you can get that. You plug it. This RTL will work between 500 megahertz to 1.7 gigahertz, and the L-band is between 1 to 2 gigahertz, so they play very well together, and you can get something like that. Now, if you want to go even a bit further, you can get the Hack RF1, which is a very capable device, and that will go from 1 megahertz to 6 gigahertz. So you're talking L, S, and C band satellites that you can intercept. And this one is half duplex and modulate and demodulate, which is send and receive data. And you can do a lot of work and research on these devices. So they are very easy to have. And as you've seen, $200, you can start doing interception with very common, well-known and common and well-documented vulnerabilities. Unfortunately, still haven't been addressed, and I don't think they will be addressed anytime soon. I would like to thank everyone for their time and for their presence, and I hope I said a few things that others found it as well useful. So thank you so much. That's everything from my end.
Thank you very much. It was a great presentation. We appreciate the videos as well as the show and tell as well. Much thanks again all the way from Australia. It's after midnight out there right now, so we appreciate your dedication. I'm gonna put a link to the slides in the chat. One thing I failed to mention in the intro is that the latest CSIAC Journal, Volume 9, Issue number 2, also contains article related to this webinar presentation, so I'll put a link into that as well. The Q&A is now open. There were some questions going on in the chat. Some of them were answered, but I'll repeat those here for those of you who didn't have access to the chat. So the Q&A is now open. Please put all your questions into the Q&A now if you have those. So our first question was from Daniel. He says, is it a requirement for satellite control systems and other informational data streams to be separated either at the protocol and/or application layer? I'm assuming it gets a lot more expensive and complicated to have multiple radios and transceivers on the platform. From the graph, it is not really apparent.
That's 100% correct. In the proper satellite dimensions, they would be separated. They will have two systems separated, where the payload will get as well its connection of data, but everything should have or will be going through the bus, but you'll have separate systems. But as you saw here with the CubeSats, the real estate is very, very small here. So they have to embed everything on these chips, and that is part of their vulnerability. Part of their size is their vulnerability. They have to include everything in that SDR now as well. So you're right, they have to be separated. And when we spoke on the architecture as well, sometimes the classification of the bus is different from the payload, which create very complex issues to navigate these problems.
All right, thank you. Our next question is from David. He said, for the space vehicle, what's the general rule for defining critical components for your H-bomb, HBOM?
So I'll be repeating myself a lot when I say that defense in depth strategy is the key point in whatever you look into it. So in any exercise you want to implement, don't focus on just one control or one certain mitigation point, but layer them. So that's why something like Sparta, I see it very, very, very useful, because that will introduce you to understand all these tactics and techniques and start applying your controls based on that. And the good thing about this matrix is you can apply your controls based on the NIST 53, which as a government organization you'll be already working on. So that will save you a lot of time in applying your controls. And when you think on satellites, there are IoT, like a SCADA systems, but flying in space, which make things more complex for us because it's a different type of security. Imagine having on your fridge an EDR, because this is an IoT. It will be very difficult, and that's why they are introducing mitigations like IP, IDS and IPS to have this layer of defense before that, and that's becoming very popular. I've seen a lot of security organization already offering that in space, like Deloitte and others are offering these services, IPS services in space. So always think defense in depth strategy and apply it, you'll be good.
Thank you. Next question from Sharon. Are consumer satellite phone communications subject to hacking?
That's accurate. One of the things we've done is a phone, satellite phone, and they are very hackable, unfortunately. This is where we're going. The concern of commercial satellites, especially in the early days, where we are happy just to have that satellite in orbit. There's a lot of risk that is happening. So security is at the bottom of our priority. Let's get this satellite up and running before we worry about these things. And there's a lot of papers and researchers. They were very confident that their architecture is very complex for other people to understand. So there was a lot of gatekeeping on the architecture and the design of satellites, and their thinking is they can protect themselves like that, but it's not the case. As you've seen, satellites, and especially phone and communication satellites, are intercepted. Imagine with $300 tools that you can do that. A very capable adversary, what they can do with with their tools.
Thank you. I see some questions in the chat about the slides as well as the recording. So I've reposted the link to the slides at the CSIAC webinar announcement, as well as the link to the related journal article. The recording for this will be on the CSIAC YouTube page, as well as posted to the CSIAC webinar announcement. Give us a day or so, and we'll have that up. I know particularly for this, being that we did have the videos for the proof of concepts, people would probably like to review that recording. So we'll have that up very shortly. And monitoring the chat, I don't see anything else. So with that said, we'll log off now. I'd like to thank our presenters one more time for his involvement with the journal as well as the webinar. I think this was a great session. On the way out, please do fill out the survey. We do look at that feedback. So we're always looking for suggestions on how we can improve, whether that be the webinar process with WebEx, as well as looking for new topics as well. If you would like to submit to become a webinar presenter or a journal author, then you can contact CSI directly. If you have a question that comes to you that you couldn't answer right now, you can always submit a technical inquiry to CSI, and we'll get you in contact with the presenter as well. So thank you. This was a great presentation, and hopefully see you next month for the next monthly webinar series from CSI.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for the time as well. Thank you so much.